Despite not being the protagonist of the story, it's true that the goddess Athena is an extremely important figure in the Saint Seiya universe, not only because she belongs to the deities of Olympus, but because it's around her that the central part of the story revolves, whether in the original anime and manga, or in the various spin-offs, movies and other adaptations, and that's why we have chosen her for our first Saint Seiya Curiosities videos on this channel. This is 21 Curious Facts about the goddess Athena. 1. As we all know, the goddess Athena returns to Earth when the next holy war is coming. However, there are those who continue to believe that this return occurs exactly every 243 years, time that we know elapsed since the war in which Shion and Dako participated until the war we saw in the original manga. But in reality, the only thing that is known is that said return is around 200 years. That is to say, once 2 centuries have passed since her previous arrival, the Pope in turn begins to wait for her next birth, but without knowing precisely when it will be. 2. Continuing with the theme of her reincarnation, everything seems to indicate that once Athena appears as a human on Earth, her memories, both of Olympus and her previous incarnations, are completely forgotten, and she must wait until some triggering event that occurs in her new life allows her to recover her memories gradually. We can see this both in the canonical Athena, Saori and Sasha from Next Dimension, as well as in other official versions such as Sasha herself but from Lost Canvas and Katleya in Darkwing. 3. Leaving aside what is related to her birth, unlike other gods such as Hades or Poseidon, Athena does not use the body of a human being as a container to be reborn on Earth, but rather decides to be part of humanity, transforming her own body, which in theory is in Olympus, into that of an ordinary person who, as I mentioned before, over time will recover her memories and become aware of her true identity. 4. It's said that originally Masami Kurumada did not think of making Athena an incarnation of the goddess of Olympus. That is, it was not his intention that we could see her as an individual character, but rather he wanted her to be a kind of essence that would allow human beings, or in this case the knights, to experience it in a particular way. In other words, it would serve as a kind of trigger so that once the protagonist connected with Athena, they would be able to blow up their cosmos. Now, although this idea was ultimately discarded, it's likely that it was taken up in some way by Toei Animation towards the end of the battle in Asgard, when Seiya established a similar connection with the god of those frozen lands, Odin. 5. As we saw in Next Dimension, it's likely that Athena's hair has the property of granting eternal youth to the person who ingests it, as it happened with Hecate outside the Temple of the Moon. However, we cannot be 100% sure, as there is also the possibility that this effect has been achieved due to Hecate's own skills and knowledge. 6. Although it has little to do with Saint Seiya, it's interesting to mention that the character Athena Asamiya from the 1987 video game Athena is inspired by Saori Kido, who as we know was adapted by Toei Animation a year before the after-mentioned video game was released, being not only the name, but the hair color with violet or purple tones, and the pearl necklace that she wears around her neck are some of the references that we can notice. And yes, this Athena Asamiya is the same one that years later was included in the world-famous The King of Fighters. 7. The first image we had of the mythological Athena in Saint Seiya did not come from the author, Masami Kurumada, but rather through the animated series developed by Toei Animation. This during the arrival at the Temple of Capricorn, where through a flashback we observed the after-mentioned deity giving the legendary sword to what in theory would be the ancient knight of Capricorn. Now, we see a similar scene in the Next Dimension manga, but this time in the Temple of Sagittarius, where, as in the anime series, the goddess gives a weapon to the ancient golden saint of this constellation who on this occasion receives the so-called Arrow of the Goddess. 8. On repeated occasions it has been said that the saint of Pegasus is the one who has always been by Athena's side since the Age of Myth. However, this affirmation was supported mostly by the spin-off The Lost Canvas, and not so much by canonical history beyond the fact that in the saga of Hades, the god of the underworld himself claimed that in the past he was beaten by the Knight of Pegasus, an element that the after-mentioned spin-off used and expanded in the way also described. Now, once Next Dimension has already reached the point of including Sasha and her past with Tenman alone, it's possible that the closeness between Athena and Pegasus since the era of myth will become something canonical that is already not based solely on spin-offs. 9. Although Athena's personality in any of her incarnations is usually that of someone compassionate and kind, in The Lost Canvas we have an Athena who has also shown to be somewhat ruthless, because as we observed in Guiding number 11, corresponding to Gemini, some of the members of Ares' army were ordered to be beheaded by the goddess of the earth, which reminds us a little more of the version of her in Greek mythology. 10. Officially, 4 gods have been shown who are considered Athena's brothers: Abel in the third of the classic films, Pallas in the Saint Seiya Omega spin-off, Apollo in the movie Tenkaihen Overture, and Artemis, who has also appeared in this film, as well as in the canon manga Saint Seiya Next Dimension. Curiously, before each of these, she has shown different traits of her personality. With Abel, feigning appreciation and then betraying him. With Pallas, being compassionate and always having the intention of saving her and making her see reason. With Apollo, direct and threatening. And finally, with Artemis acting respectful and humble, asking her for help in order to save Seiya. 11. Speaking of Athena Saori, it's perfectly clear that, in her relationship with the Bronze Saints, they are, so to speak, in subordination to her. However, little do we think that, at the same time, Saori would legally become the niece or even sister of Seiya and company, since as we all know, the latter are children of Mitsumasa Kido, who is both grandfather and father adoptive of the capricious incarnation of the goddess. 12. As I mentioned earlier, a triggering event seems to be required to allow the incarnation of Athena to regain her memories and assimilate her role as a goddess. In the case of Saori Kido, it's very likely that said trigger was a light from the shield that illuminated her during the Battle of the 12 Temples, while the staff with Nike was at her side, since we notice that from then onwards not only her attitude has a drastic change, but also seems to have better control over Cosmos. 13. Taking only the anime and classic movies into account, Athena has been put in danger a total of 11 times, beginning with her first kidnapping at the hands of Socrates, followed by another kidnapping by Jamian, the arrow strike by Ptolemy, the test in Asgard to prevent the ice from melting, the confinement in the central pillar by Poseidon, her semi-suicide with the golden dagger in the Hades saga, chapter Sanctuary, and the confinement in the vessel at the hands of Hypnos, as well as the kidnapping by Ares, the trance state by Dorbal, the eternal sleep by Abel, and the torture that received on the film The Warriors of the Last Holy War. Clearly, one more of the stereotypes created by Toei Animation in the Saint Seiya universe. 14. Athena Saori is the incarnation of the goddess who, so far, has participated in more holy wars, since she not only faced Hades and Poseidon in the 20th century, but has also been involved in the war against Hades already, but that of the 18th century. Now, if we go beyond the canon, Saori would have also participated in the war against Mars and Apsu, as well as against Pallas and Saturn. This is logical, considering that since she was little she liked to fight. 15. And since we're talking about its non-canonical version in Omega, it's curious that in this anime Saori looks almost a teenager, when at that time her age is around 30 years old, contrary to the original manga where Saori is barely 13 years old, but her appearance makes her look like an adult of at least 18. 16. Moving on to Athena Sasha, both the one from Lost Canvas and the one from Next Dimension, she's the first Athena known to have been born outside of Sanctuary. In the case of the one from Lost Canvas, it was until she was 9 years old that Sasha arrived at the Sanctuary after Sisyphus found her. As for Next Dimension, as far as the story currently goes, as with Sasha is already a teenager, it seems that no one within Sanctuary, not even the Patriarch or the Gold Knights, are aware of her existence. 17. According to Greek mythology, the relationship between Hades and Athena is that of uncle and niece, the latter being the daughter of Zeus, who is Hades' brother. Interestingly, in the spin-off The Lost Canvas, the reincarnation of both deities, Sasha and Alone, turn out to be brothers. 18. Unlike Saori, Sasha in The Lost Canvas exhibits a better use of the cosmos and even has a notion of hand-to-hand combat, making it clear that she received training during the 5 years she was in the Sanctuary before the Holy War began. Opposite case to the after-mentioned Saori Kido, who returned to the Sanctuary until she was 13 years old, just a few weeks before the war against Poseidon and a few months before the war against Hades. 19. Speaking now of the 16th century Athena, contrary to what we saw with Saori and Sasha, who were teenagers when they faced their respective holy wars, this Athena was around 20 years old when this battle took place, which would make her the oldest goddess presented so far. Of course, that if we don't include the adult version of Saori in Saint Seiya Omega, which as I mentioned before, was already around 30 years old. 20. Despite the fact that many think that the Athena of the 16th century is called Sendai, this is a misinterpretation when listening to the Japanese version, since the word Sendai in that language alludes to something earlier. So when we hear that they call her Athena Sendai, it's not that they refer to her name, but that they allude to the Athena that was before Sasha or to the predecessor Athena. 21. So far, and I hope I'm not wrong, we have officially seen 10 reincarnations of the mythological Athena, Saori Kido in the classic anime and manga, as well as in Saint Seiya Omega and Saint Seiya, Sasha in the spin-off The Lost Canvas, the canonical Sasha in the Next Dimension manga, the 16th century Athena Sendai also in The Lost Canvas, a pair of nameless Athenas also in this spin-off, one from the 13th century and another one from the future, Athena Lost World, who could be well Saori but her name was never actually revealed in episode G Assassin, as well as the twins Tomoe and Yoshino in this same story, and finally Katsuya Mikagami in the recent manga Saint Seiya Darkwing. And up to this point, 21 curiosities of the goddess Athena. Comment which other character you would like a video for this section, but don't forget to subscribe and activate channel notifications so you don't miss out on all the new videos. I'm your friend Cal, and we'll see you next time here on Star Hill, your Saint Seiya, an anime channel.